So free agency has already begun for Major League Baseball players. It started on Halloween, but the first day that players are allowed to sign with a new team is this week on November 4th. So the offseason has officially begun for the New York Mets, and it's about to heat up. So let's take a look at the team's goals this offseason. We're going to do that with the host of the Subway to Shea podcast. My guy, Anthony Rivera, joins me now. Anthony, what's up? How you doing, man?
You know, outside of making the playoffs and having that run, this is probably the best time of the year. You get to the offseason, you get to free agency, a lot of moves going to happen, and the Mets have a lot of moves to make, so I'm very excited about it.
Yes, let's get right into it. Should be an exciting offseason for the Metropolitans. And Anthony, before we get to the offseason, I'm going to look back a little bit. So when you look back on the Mets 2024 season, what do you think were the biggest takeaways from their journey to the NLCS? What helped them reach that point, and where did they fall short?
I like to use this line with the Mets for the 2024 season, and that's resilience through adversity. This team came from 0-5. They had a 9-19 May, and they were able to find a way to make it into the postseason and have a pretty deep run, coming 2 games short of going to the World Series. And you look at just the resilience of this team from the players through Carlos Mendoza and what he did and how David Stearns put the team together. You got MVP performances from Francisco Lindor. You had the emergence of Mark Vientos. Then you got the I Gotta Prove It characters in Sean Manaea and Luis Severino. You had the depth guys in Jose Iglesias bringing him his OMG to the Mets. Jesse Winker, Tyrone Taylor. They just, they kind of fell short and ran out of steam at the end.
Yeah, and it happens. They ran out of steam at the end, but it was a fantastic season for Mets fans, an exciting ride. And when you look at the changes that they had in the offseason, particularly with Carlos Mendoza in a manager and a new front office team in their first season, how would you grade their performance? And do you think they made significant cultural shifts within the team?
I think a fair grade for them is a B plus to me, just short of an A. I think if they would have made it to the World Series and had a deep, series with the Yankees, I think it may have been an A. But I think for this first year, a B is good for them, a B plus that is. And David Stearns did not hesitate to take out players who were not helping this team. Carlos Mendoza kept them fresh every day. They did not let any big loss, and they had a pretty, few of them, big losses during the season. He did not let them linger, and the players came to play every day and were able to push themselves through to the postseason. And when it comes to the culture, I talked about this with you many times in the past on here, on my podcast. I said this team really had to have a good season in 2024 to kind of make free agents want to come here and make this a destination, not only just for making the most money because Steve Cohen has the most money to give. It's to have players that want to be here. And we heard it all season long, whether it was from Iglesias or Lindor, Nimmo. Every player had great things to say about how this organization was run. And that's things you didn't hear in the past. So it's a great step. You've got a great hierarchy in the Cohens running the team, from David Stearns and also Carlos Mendoza as the manager.
Yeah, and that gives optimism to the Mets fans and thinking that the future is bright, especially heading into this offseason. And speaking about this offseason, as the Mets now begin this, what would you say are the team's biggest needs that should be addressed to build on the momentum from this past season?
Well, we're kind of back at square one when it comes to the rotation, right? We got to rebuild this rotation again because Sean Manaea is a free agent. Luis Severino is a free agent. So is Jose Quintana. So the Mets are going to have to rebuild the rotation again because all they really have right now is Kodai Senga. We don't know his health. Paul Blackburn's going to be coming back from injury. You got David Peterson, possibly, Jose Budo, as well as Tyler McGill. But the Mets are going to really have to go into that free agent pool. There's a couple of good starters out there. They can bring back a couple of their starters. We'll see how it comes out when it comes to the rotation. Obviously, you'll always want to keep replenishing the bullpen. That's a thing that needs to be done every single year. You got to have pitchers that are able to get to Edwin Diaz at the end of games and prove that they can get some big outs. And then you look at first base with Pete Alonso becoming a free agent, as well as the outfield as well.
All right, we'll see what they do to address those needs. Now, one of the big things that's going to be talked about this offseason, the Mets are reportedly in the mix for Juan Soto. How much of a game changer would Soto be for this lineup? And do you think the Mets should go all in to make this happen?
I think he's a game changer on any lineup that you put him in. He was a game changer in the Yankees lineup and helped them get to the World Series with big at bats in the postseason, big at bats all year. He's only 25 years old, and I do think that the Mets should be all in on Juan Soto. He's a type of player that, if you remember last year, the Mets offered Yamamoto the most money to come to the team, although he ended up going with the Dodgers for the same price. But that's a type of player that you're gonna give the most money to and give them years as well. He's a franchise player. He's a kid that is probably top five, could be top three in Major League Baseball. If there's anyone that I'm going to give money to and open the checkbooks for, it's going to be Juan Soto.
All right, there you go. So Anthony willing to back up the Brinks truck for Juan Soto, but Mets fans will also say, well, what if that doesn't happen? What if you don't get Soto? So aside from the possibility of the outfielder, where else could the Mets offense improve? And are there any free agent hitters that you think will be a good fit for this Metropolitan club?
So if they don't get Juan Soto, the chance that they don't get them, when you're looking at the outfield, you got Teoscar Hernandez, who's coming off a great season in LA with the World Series champions. You got Anthony Santander, who also, he hit 40 home runs as well as Juan Soto did. So those are two guys that I would look for in the outfield. When it comes to first base, Pete Alonso, obviously I would want to return on a good deal. There's also Christian Walker. He's a little bit older, but that's another guy you could throw at first base if you can't retain Alonso. Then you're looking at guys like, Willie Adames for third base, and maybe if they don't sign Alonso, you put, Mark Vientos, who had a really great season at first base. So there are options out there to make this off season successful, even if you don't get Juan Soto. But Juan Soto should be the number one priority for this Mets team.
All right, there you go. You have Juan Soto at the top of your list. Let's look at pitching in terms of arms. Who do you think can help strengthen the Mets starting pitching rotation? And then also, who should the Amazins target to fortify their bullpen?
When you're looking at these free agent pitchers, especially the starters, you got Corbin Burns out there in Baltimore. He's had good postseason runs before, and he's very familiar with our president of baseball operations, David Stearns. So keep an eye out on that, as well as, Stearns has been known to bring his guys over. He did it with Tyrone Taylor, as well as Adrian Hauser at the time. But you keep your eye on that. Roki Sasaki is also going to probably be posted, from Japan. You look into that. Blake Snell is a free agent. If you could get him on the right deal, that's something to look at, because the Mets will probably be looking for smaller deals like they did last year as well. And then you got Walker Buehler, who's on the World Series champions. That's a guy that, kind of like with Luis Severino and Sean Manaea, is on a prove-it-to-me deal. So that's possibility as well. When it comes to the bullpen, I'm looking at guys like Tanner Scott, a lefty. We have to get a left-handed pitcher in that bullpen that's good, and that's Tanner Scott to me. So that's a guy I would definitely look at, as well as Blake Trinan from the Los Angeles Dodgers.
All right, those are two good names for the bullpen there that could help the Mets pen and fortify that, along with the names you mentioned in terms of the starters. Now, who among the Mets' current free agents should be a top priority to re-sign? And are there any players that you think they could afford to let go?
Well, letting go, possibly, Luis Severino. If you could get him on the right deal, I would think about bringing him back. But, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, if those guys go, I wouldn't be as upset. I am bringing back these five players, and it's Sean Manaea. He has to me, is one of the bigger parts of this rotation. He, turned his second half around by changing his arm angle, and he pretty much pitched, as the best, as an ace of this staff for all of the second half, and it was huge in the postseason. Pete Alonso as well. That's a given for me to bring him back if you could get him on a good deal. And when I look at the depth of this team, Jose Iglesias and Jesse Winker really brought something to this team, whether it was the culture or the way they play. You look at Winker, he's one of those, tough guys in the lineup that, gets under other team's skin. And I like to have that on my team. I don't like to go against those type of players. That's why I wanted to trade for him. And like I said, with Jose Iglesias, he's such a leader, like that secondary leader in the clubhouse. It's pretty big to have there. And I would bring back Ryan Stanek. He had a great postseason after coming over and having a tough transition during the season, but he turned it on. Him and Edwin Diaz were the best parts of the bullpen in that postseason and were relied upon to get a lot of outs, and they did just that. So Manaea, Alonso, Iglesias, Winker, and Stanek are the guys that I'm bringing back.
All right, there you go. We'll see if the Mets are able to bring all of those guys back to the team in 2025. Final thing for me, Anthony, with all the anticipated moves and possible improvements, where do you see the Mets position in the NL East and overall next season? Do you think this is just the beginning of a new era for the franchise?
I think so. This is a huge offseason for David Stearns. So much money is coming off the books, over 175 million from free agents that they have right now to guys like Scherzer and Verlander, who they still had to pick up their money. All that money is off the books. So much money to spend. There's really no excuse to not put together a team that can get back to the National League Championship Series. And that should be the goal, not just making the postseason, but getting to the NLCS again. Everything has changed with this team. And you look at the other teams in the NL East. The Phillies are probably going to try to retool and try to get revenge on the Mets for knocking them out in the NLDS. And then you got the Atlanta Braves, who a lot of their stars were injured, so we didn't really see them in full force this season. So watch those two teams. They will be at the top of it. You got young and upcoming team in the Washington Nationals as well. So it's not going to be easy, but the Mets could make a lot of headway this offseason, whether it's through free agency or trades. They got to get it done, and they got to get themselves back into the NLCS.
All right, Mets fans would like that back to the NLCS. Even better, they would like the team back in the World Series for the first time since 2015. We will see what happens with the Mets offseason. But it's good to always get an outlook on the offseason. We did that with Anthony Rivera, host of the Subway to Shea podcast, always doing a fantastic job talking Mets baseball. Anthony, thank you for the time. We will talk soon.
Thank you, Dexter. Appreciate you very much, man.